and the stages of combustion. Recognize the different methods of fire detection, fire communication, and fire suppression. Identify the different types of fire suppression agents and devices appropriate for data centers. Throughout history, fire has systematically wreaked havoc on industry. Today's data centers and network rooms are under enormous pressure to maintain seamless operations. Some companies risk losing millions of dollars with one data center catastrophe. Throughout his catastrophe, in fact, industry studies tell us that 43% of businesses that close due to fire never reopen, and 29% of those that do reopen fail within 3 years. With these statistics in mind, it is imperative that all business prepare themselves for unseen disasters. The good news is that the most effective method of fire protection is fire prevention. At the completion of this course, you will be one step closer to understanding industry safeguarding methods that are used to protect a data center's hottest commodity, information. This course will discuss the prevention, theory, detection, communication, and suppression of fire specific to data centers. Let's start by discussing the National Fire Protection Association, or the NFPA. The NFPA is a worldwide organization that was established in 1896 to protect the public against the dangers of fire and electricity. The NFPA's mission is to reduce the worldwide burden of fire and other hazards on the quality of life by developing and advocating scientifically based consensus codes and standards, research, training, and education. The NFPA is responsible for creating fire protection standards, one of them being NFPA 75. NFPA 75 is the standard for protection of computer or data processing equipment. One notable addition to NFPA 75 that took place in 1999 allows data centers to continue to power electronic equipment upon activation of a gaseous agent total flooding system, which we will discuss later in this course. This exception was made for data centers that meet the following risk considerations: economic loss that could result from loss of function or loss of records, loss of equipment value, loss of life, and the risk of fire threat to the installation, to occupants, or exposed property within that installation. It's important to note that NFPA continually updates its standards to accommodate the ever-changing data center environment. Please note that NFPA does set the worldwide standards for fire protection, but in most cases, the authority having jurisdiction has the final say in what can or cannot be used for fire protection in a facility. Now that we've identified the standards and guidelines of fire protection for a data center, let's get started with some facts about fire protection. Fire prevention provides more protection than any type of fire detection device or fire suppression equipment available. In general, if the data center is incapable of breeding fire, there'll be no threat of fire damage to the facility. To promote prevention within a data center environment, it's important to eliminate as many fire-causing factors as possible. A few examples to help achieve this are: when building a new data center, ensure that it is built far away from any other buildings that may pose a fire threat to the data center. Enforce a strict no smoking policy in IT and control rooms. The data center should be void of any trash receptacles. All office furniture in the data center must be constructed of metal. The use of acoustical materials such as foam or fabric or any material used to absorb sound is not recommended in a data center. Even if a data center is considered fireproof, it is important to safeguard against downtime in the event that a fire does occur. Fire protection now becomes the priority. The main goal of a data center fire protection system is to contain a fire without threatening the lives of personnel and to minimize downtime. With this in mind, if a fire were to break out, there are 3 system objectives that must be met. The first objective is to detect the presence of a fire. The second objective is to communicate the threat to both the authorities and occupants. Finally, the last objective is to suppress the fire and limit any damage. Being familiar with common technologies associated with fire detection, communication, and suppression allows IT managers to better specify a fire protection strategy for their data center. Prior to the selection of a detection, communication, or suppression system, a design engineer must assess the potential hazards and issues associated with the given data center. When fire protection now becomes the priority. The main goal of a data center fire protection system is to contain a fire. Discussing fire protection, it's important that we first understand the basic theory behind fire. This section will provide a tutorial on fire. We will cover the fire triangle and the fire tetrahedron, the classes of fire, and fire's stages of combustion. For many years, the concept of fire was symbolized by the fire triangle. That represents the 3 elements that must interact in order for fire to exist. These elements were heat, oxygen, and fuel. Fuel was defined as a material used to produce heat or power by burning. When considering fire in a data center, fuel is anything that has the capability to catch fire, such as servers, cables, or flooring. In recent years, the chemical chain reaction has been added as a 4th component for fire to exist, and this changed the fire triangle to the fire tetrahedron. The chain reaction provides the heat necessary to maintain the fire. This 4th addition better describes the mechanism for fire suppression, especially with a clean agent that breaks up the chain reaction of combustion. When one of these factors is taken away, the fire can no longer exist. This is the basic theory behind fire suppression. Fire can be categorized into 5 classes: Class A, B, C, D, and K. As you can see from the classes of fire chart, Class A represents fires involving ordinary combustible materials, such as paper, wood, cloth, rubber, and some plastics. Class B fires are fires involving flammable liquids and gases, such as oil, paint, lacquer, solvents, tars, petroleum, greases, and gasoline. Class C fires involve live electrical equipment. Class C fires are usually Class A or Class B fires that have electricity present. Class D fires involve combustible metals or combustible metal alloys such as magnesium, sodium, potassium, titanium, lithium, or zirconium. The last class is Class K fires. These fires involve cooking appliances that use combustible cooking agents such as vegetable or animal oils and fats. Generally, Class A, B, and C fires are the most common classes of fire that one may encounter in a data center. This chart represents all of the different classes of fire that are able to be extinguished successfully with a basic fire extinguisher. Later in our course, we'll discuss several types of extinguishing agents used in data centers. The next step in categorizing a fire is to determine what stage of combustion it is in. The 4 stages of combustion are the incipient stage or pre-combustion stage, the visible smoke stage, the flaming fire stage, and lastly, the intense heat stage. As these stages progress, the risk of property damage and the risk to life increases drastically. All of these categories play an important role in fire protection, specifically data centers. By studying the classes of fire and the stages of combustion, it's easy to determine what type of fire protection system will best suit the needs of a data center. Now that we've completed our tutorial on fire, let's look at some fire detection devices. There are 4 main types of fire detection devices. They are smoke detectors, heat detectors, flame detectors, and multi-sensor detectors. For the purposes of protecting a data center, smoke detectors are the most effective. Other detectors are not recommended for use in data centers, as they do not provide detection in the incipient stages of fire and therefore do not provide early warning for protection of high-value assets. Smoke detectors are far more effective forms of protection in data centers simply because they are able to detect a fire at the incipient stage. For this reason, we'll be focusing on the attributes and impact of smoke detectors. There are 2 types of smoke detectors that are used effectively in data centers. They are intelligent spot type detectors and air sampling smoke detectors. Intelligent spot type smoke detectors are much more sensitive than a conventional smoke detector. Intelligent spot type smoke detectors utilize a laser beam, which scans particles that pass through the detector. The laser beam is able to distinguish whether or not the particles are simply dust or actually a byproduct of combustion, like smoke. Furthermore, intelligent spot-type smoke detectors are individually addressable. Dust, or actually a byproduct of combustion, like smoke. Furthermore, intelligent spot-type smoke detectors are individually addressable. This means that it has the ability to send information to a central control station and pinpoint the exact location of the alarm. Another feature of intelligent spot-type smoke detectors is that the sensitivity of the detector can be increased or decreased during certain times of the day. For example, when workers leave an area, the sensitivity can be increased. The intelligent spot-type smoke detectors can also compensate to a changing environment due to environmental factors such as humidity or dirt accumulation, and minimize the likelihood of false alarms. Intelligent spot-type detectors are most commonly placed in the following areas: below raised floors, on ceilings, above drop-down ceilings, in air handling ducts to detect possible fires within an HVAC system. By placing detectors near the exhaust intake of a computer room air conditioner, detection can be accelerated. Air sampling smoke detection systems, sometimes referred to as a very early smoke detection system, are usually described as a high-powered photoelectric detector. This type of detector is recognized for its ability to detect a fire in its incipient stage and can provide a faster response time. These systems are comprised of a network of pipes attached to a single detector, which continually draws air in and samples it. The pipes are typically made of PVC, but can also be CPVC, EMT, or copper. Depending on the space being protected and the configuration of multiple sensors, these systems can cover an area of 2,500 to 80,000 square feet, or 232 to 7,432 square meters. This system also utilizes a laser beam, much more powerful than the one contained in a common photoelectric detector, to detect byproducts of combustion. As the particles pass through the detector, the laser beam is able to distinguish them as dust or byproducts of combustion. Now that we've talked about fire detection devices and systems, let's take a look at the next objective of fire protection: communication. All of the previously mentioned detection devices would be virtually useless if they were not directly tied into an effective signaling and notification device. Signaling devices provide audible alarms such as horns, bells, or sirens, or visual alarms such as strobes, which warn building occupants after a signaling device has been activated. Signaling devices are also an effective way of communicating danger to individuals who may be visually or hearing impaired. One of the most basic and common signaling devices are pull stations. The next communication system we'll be covering is the control system, known as the Fire Alarm Control Panel. Control systems are often considered the brains of a fire protection system. The computer programs used by control systems allow users to program and manage the system based on their individual requirements. The system can be programmed with certain features, such as time delays, thresholds, and passwords. Once the detector, pull station, or sensor activates the control system, the system has the ability to set its pre-programmed list of rules into motion. Most importantly, the control One important safety feature to mention that is not directly related to communication or suppression systems is the emergency power off, or EPO. If a fire progresses to the point where all other means of suppression have been exhausted, the authorities that arrive on site will have the option to utilize this feature. The EPO is intended to power down equipment or an entire installation in an emergency to protect personnel and equipment. EPO is typically used either by firefighting personnel or by equipment operators. When used by firefighters, it is used to assure that equipment is de-energized during firefighting so that firefighters are not subjected to shock hazards. The secondary purpose is to facilitate firefighting by eliminating electricity as a source of energy, feeding combustion. EPO may also be activated in case of a flood, electrocution, or other emergency. There's a high cost associated with abruptly shutting down a data center. Unfortunately, EPO tripping is often the result of human error. Much debate has ensued over the use of EPO and may one day lead to the elimination of EPO in data centers. The last goal of a data center fire protection system is suppression. The next section will review suppression agents and devices that are often used in data centers or IT environments. Let's start with the most common suppression agents and devices. They are fire extinguishers and total flooding fire extinguishing systems. Fire extinguishers are one of the oldest yet most reliable forms of fire suppression. They are extremely valuable in data centers because they are a quick solution to suppressing a fire. Fire extinguishers allow for a potentially hazardous situation to be addressed before more drastic or costly measures need to be taken. It is important to note that only specific types of gaseous agents can be used in data center fire extinguishers. HFC 236FA is a gaseous agent specific to fire extinguishers that has been approved for use in data centers. It is environmentally safe and can be discharged in occupied areas. Additionally, it exists as a gas, therefore it leaves no residue upon discharge. Simply put, it extinguishes fires by removing heat and chemically preventing combustion. A more sophisticated form of fire extinguishing is the total flooding fire extinguishing system, sometimes referred to as a clean agent fire suppression system. Total flooding fire extinguishing systems are comprised of a series of cylinders or high-pressure tanks filled with an extinguishing or gaseous agent. A gaseous agent is a gaseous chemical compound that extinguishes the fire by either removing heat or oxygen or both. Given a closed, well-sealed room, gaseous agents are very effective at extinguishing a fire while leaving no residue. When installing such a system, the total volume of the room and how much equipment is being protected is taken into consideration. The number of the tanks or cylinders to be installed are dependent upon these factors, as well as the type of agent used. It is important to note that the standard that guides total flooding suppression systems is NFPA 2001. If a fire occurs, systems is NFPA 2001. If a fire occurs and the system is activated, the gaseous agent discharges and fills the room in about 10 seconds. One of the best features of this system is that it's able to infiltrate hard-to-reach places, such as equipment cabinets. This makes total flooding fire extinguishing systems perfect for data centers. Now that we've discussed total flooding fire extinguishing systems, let's start reviewing the agents that such systems deploy. In the past, some agents were conductive and/or corrosive. Conductive and corrosive agents have negative impacts on IT equipment. For example, conductive agents may cause short circuits between electronic components within IT equipment, and corrosive agents may eat away at electronic components within IT equipment. The gaseous agents used in today's data centers are non-conductive and non-corrosive. An effective agent that is both non-conductive and non-corrosive was widely used in data centers is halon. Unfortunately, it was discovered that halon is detrimental to the ozone layer, and as of 1994, the production of halon is no longer permitted. This has led to the development of safer and cleaner gaseous agents. Today, some of the most commonly used gaseous agents in data centers are inert gases and fluorine-based compounds. Let's review the characteristics of each agent. The most widely accepted inert gases for fire suppression in data centers are pro-inert or IG55 and inergen or IG541. Inert gases are composed of nitrogen, argon, and carbon dioxide, all of which are found naturally in the atmosphere. Because of this, they have zero ozone depletion potential, meaning that it possesses no threat to humans or to the environment. Inert gases can also be discharged in occupied areas and are non-conductive. Inergen requires a large number of storage tanks for effective discharge. But because inergen is stored as a high-pressure gas, it can be stored up to 300 feet or 91.44 meters away from the protected space. Inergen is used successfully in telecommunication offices and data centers. Another suppression alternative for data centers is fluorine-based compounds. Fluorine-based compound HFC 227EA is known under commercial brands FM200, Novak 1230, and Fe227. The concentration of Novak 1230 is typically between 5.3% and 5.6% of the room volume, which means it requires less cylinders and less space, making the storage footprint for the fire suppression agent very small. HFC 227EA has a zero HFC agent footprint for the fire suppression agent very small. HFC 227EA has a zero ozone depletion potential and an acceptably low global warming potential. It's also odorless and colorless. HFC 227EA is stored as liquefied compressed gas. Another suppression alternative for data centers is fluorine-based of 227EA has a zero ozone depletion potential and an HFC 227EA is stored as liquefied compressed gas with a boiling point of 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It is discharged as an electrically non-conductive gas that leaves no residue and will not harm occupants. However, like in any other fire situation, all occupants should evacuate the area as soon as an alarm sounds. It can be used with ceiling heights up to 16 feet or 4.8 meters. HFC 227EA has one of the lowest storage space requirements. The floor space required is equal to that of needing only 1.7 times that of a Halon 1301 system. HFC 227EA chemically inhibits the combustion reaction by removing heat and can be discharged in 10 seconds or less. An advantage to this agent is that it can be retrofitted into an existing Halon 1301 system, but the pipe network must be replaced or an additional cylinder of nitrogen must be used to push the agent through the original Halon pipe network. Some applications include data centers, switchgear rooms, automotive, and battery rooms. There is also HFC 125. Battery rooms. There is also HFC 125. This is known under two commercial brands, ECARO 25 and FE 25. HFC 125 has a zero ozone depletion potential and an acceptable low global warming potential. It is odorless, colorless, and is stored as a liquefied compressed gas. This agent chemically inhibits the combustion reaction by removing heat and can be discharged in 10 seconds or less as an electrically non-conductive gas that leaves no residue and will not harm occupants. It can be used in occupied areas. However, like in any other fire situation, all occupants should be evacuated as soon as an alarm sounds. It can be used with ceiling heights up to 16 feet or 4.8 meters. One of the main advantages of HFC 125 is that it flows more like halon than any other agent available today and can be used in the same pipe network distribution as an original halon system. Other methods of fire suppression often found in data centers are water sprinkler systems and water mist suppression systems. Of the two options, water sprinklers are more often present in many facilities due to national and/or local fire codes. Let's review a few of the key elements of water sprinklers and water mist suppression systems. Water sprinkler systems are designed specifically to protect the structure of a building. The system is activated when the given environment reaches a designated temperature and the valve fuse opens. A valve fuse is a solder or gas bulb that opens when it reaches a temperature of 165 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 to 79 degrees Celsius. There are currently 3 configurations of water sprinkler systems available: wet pipe, dry pipe, and pre-action. Wet pipe systems are the most commonly used and are usually found in insulated buildings. Dry pipe systems are very similar to wet pipe systems with one key difference. The pipe is charged with compressed air or nitrogen to prevent damage from freezing. Pre-action systems prevent accidental water discharge by requiring a combination of sensors to activate before allowing water to fill the sprinkler pipes. Because of this feature, pre-action systems are highly recommended for data center environments. Lastly, it is important to note that water sprinklers are not typically recommended for data centers, but depending on local fire codes, they may be required. The last suppression system we'll be discussing is the water mist suppression system. When the system is activated, it discharges a very fine mist of water onto a fire. The mist of water extinguishes the fire by absorbing heat. By doing so, vapor is produced, causing a barrier between the flame and the oxygen needed to sustain the fire. Remember the fire tetrahedron? The mist system effectively takes away 2 of the main components of fire, heat and oxygen. This makes the system highly effective. Additionally, because a fine mist is used, less water is needed. Therefore, the water mist system needs minimal storage space. Water mist systems are gaining popularity due to their effectiveness in industrial environments. However, equipment failure can result from a discharge due to the high level of humidity introduced into the data center. To summarize, let's review what we've discussed today. The 3 objectives of a data center fire protection system are to identify the presence of a fire, to communicate the threat to the authorities and the occupants, and to suppress the fire to limit any damage. There are 2 types of smoke detectors that are effectively used in data centers. They are intelligent spot-type smoke detectors and air sampling smoke detectors. Signaling devices provide audible alarms like horns, bells, or sirens, and visual alarms like strobes. The most common fire suppression devices used in data centers are fire extinguishers and total flooding fire extinguishing systems. The most commonly used gaseous agents in data centers are inert gases and fluorine-based compounds. Additional methods of fire suppression are water sprinklers and water mist suppression systems. Thank you for participating in this course.